Just, yep, you're live.
I'm live?
Yep.
Hi guys, I'm live. Hey, move that just a little bit away from that. So just move the whole assembly perfect. That way if it's moved, it won't move. So anybody know any good jokes? Yeah, give us a thumb up if you can hear. We're always wanting to hear feedback on if the audio and the video is good. If there's some activity behind the camera that's distracting me. So give us a thumb up if you can hear us and see us. And
I'll get you the link.
And so I am going to be in standby. Let's see here. Here's what do you call a stick that doesn't come back? No, I messed that up totally. What do you call a boomerang that does? Oh man, what do you call a boomerang that doesn't come back? A stick.
That one kind of didn't land. That one just thudded. Crickets. Okay, they can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good, excellent. Okay. It's our monthly live stream, and yeah, we're always playing around with some new software and cameras and things back at this end because this is something we're committing to. So. Yeah, give us some feedback. Let us know if the camera quality is good, if the sound is good, because we've even got some groovy software that allow us to do transitions in between cameras and things like that. So we're still doing some final little steps, and then we'll be ready.
There it is. The video.
We got a full crew here.
It's in her own folder.
Sid's here, and Sid's the one that does. He's already leaving, but you want to say hi, Sid?
I'm leaving.
Okay, Sid's.
Hi, Sid.
Sid is Trisha's husband. He does all of our video editing on our YouTubes, and we're here with Trisha. We're here with my wife Ann. I've got my son Dakota here. Dakota's been in a couple videos. Trisha's babysitting her two nieces, so we've got a full house. So there may be some interruptions from time to time, but we're here for you guys to answer your questions. So.
Alrighty. Right. Oh, you can keep. If you want to keep talking, you can. Otherwise,
okay.
No, give a tip. I think we're good.
A tip, okay. A tip. Oh boy, RVs. I don't know anything about RVs. A tip: don't eat yellow snow. What do you mean? Oh, very well. An RV tip. Okay, well it's winter time. A tip. Okay, so if here's a tip. We say this quite often. For those of you who are using the oil-filled radiant heaters or any kind of a heater like that in your RV, if you can, do not run those on the highest setting. The oil-filled radiant heaters will usually consume around 12 amps. And what we've found is going to some of these RV jobs where there's electrical problems, the receptacles will melt. And so what we found is running those on medium setting works fine, no problems at all. But if you run those on high, you run the risk of melting the receptacles and causing issues. So there's a tip.
All right, I'll go to, let's see, us for just a second.
Okay, yeah, this is Trisha.
Hi, everybody.
So
and I think now we're on that camera.
Nope, we're on that.
Yeah, that one.
That one.
Yeah,
yeah. And that's what I say. We have two cameras set up, and we have software we can switch between the two. And you may have seen that in some of my most recent YouTube videos. I'll do picture-in-picture, so I'm still playing around with some of that software.
Yeah.
So, okay,
so,
take it away, Miss Trisha.
Well, we want to celebrate that we hit 100,000. That's crazy. Thanks, guys. So yeah, that was just pretty awesome. And we did oh yeah, I have to look at the camera.
I know, I'm looking
Sorry,
at this
guys.
one.
We're not pros here.
Yeah.
So we did an office poll. Sid won.
Sid won the poll.
He actually started the poll inadvertently. I was just scrolling through like the calendar, or I don't know. I think I just saw his notes on his desk one day, and it said March 13th, 100K. This was from like a month ago. Yeah. So then I was like, oh, okay. And so slowly we each added our own vote. And when he saw that it had become like an official poll, he was like, wait a minute. Okay, no, let me go back and actually revise my date because I did that informally. Yeah. And he ended up winning.
He nailed it. Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. So thanks everybody for helping us get to that. I think the other thing is that I'm going to try to put a poll. Where did I put these? So we have these cards. Darren talked about them in a recent video.
Here, switch them to this one and I'll hold them up. on this camera.
Okay.
So
there you go.
Are they upside down?
No.
So what I've done is, I'll give you a backstory on these, and then Trisha's going to do a poll. So the camera's here, but I'm looking at the screen to see what I'm looking at. So I'm an RV technician, and there's a lot of information that we have to carry in our heads. Thermostat fault codes, thermistor values on a refrigerator, wattages, all this information in our head is insane. And so on any given day, at least once a week, I'm looking up a manual to look up a spec to find out something. And so I had this idea of like, well, wouldn't it be great if I made these on little cards like this, and kind of you could clip them on your tool bag. And so one of the tools that we offer on our T3 interface side, you can get it from our website. Maybe we can show the website too. But if you go to our website, myrvworks.com, and you click on that right-sided orange button, I don't know what it's called, but it's like tools or something. You could get to our tools that way. And one of the tools that we sell, if you're doing aqua hot work, we have a switch box where you can turn your aqua hot on and off. You know, you have to unplug the J2 plug and then plug ours in, but you can control it from right there. And so what I made for that offering is these little cards. And so what it walks you through is the front, it says, something about aqua hot. And then on the back of that card, it's got all your part numbers that you might need, typical part numbers that you might need. And then I go through the disclaimer and all this kind of stuff. And then there's a QR code where you can get the switch box. And then I walk you through on these cards, front and back, all of the different procedures that you might go through to diagnose your burner, okay? Which is one of the things we do a lot with the aqua hot boxes. We need to prove that $900 control module is not bad. And so that's what these cards do. And so as many times as I've worked on aqua hots, I'm always got this big old laminated sheet. I'm like, well, let's make them smaller. So I have probably about 80 cards that I want to make for you guys. Because I want them on my tool bag, and if I want them on my tool bag, we can offer them to you guys. So with that, Trisha's got. So now that you understand what they're all about, I'm going to turn this back over to Trisha, and then she's going to drop them. And after I pick them up, she's going to ask you guys a question on what we could do with those.
Yeah, so I have two questions, and we'll post a poll for both things so that you can put in your vote. And so the first question is, so right now we have this laminate version.
I ran it through a little laminator with an ID card.
Which we think is pretty cool.
That's her niece.
There's a sweet little girl right there. Yeah. And the other option that we want to do eventually is plastic. When we get to that point, so our question is, would y'all, if you had the option of laminate or plastic at different price points, would you want one or the other, or do you like the option of being able to choose between the two, maybe just depending on what your budget can afford? I mean, they're not going to be that expensive, but that's one question. The other question is, we are still working on getting the format to be perfect. Now, I mean, it doesn't affect the usage of the card. Yeah. All the information is there. It's just not 100% perfect. So would you prefer to have us wait until we get that completely dialed in and it's 100% perfect? Or would you like to have these just start being offered as they are now? Again, they're not going to be that much, but anyways, those are the questions. I'll post the poll, and then I think we can start with questions. So I see that people are already putting questions in, so that's great.
Okay.
Yes, if you have questions for us, anything related to your RV, if you're looking to troubleshoot it, you have a question, anything related to RV, or if you have a question about starting an RV business, post that.
We know a guy.
We have a couple that we posted in our community post letting people know that we were going to live stream tonight, and we chose a couple from there that weren't able to make it. And so we have 3 questions. The first one is, I have a Tiffin Open Road with the Schwintek slides. Okay. My back bedroom driver's side slide doesn't close flush at the bottom. I tried the recalibrate 3 times in and out, but still the bottom doesn't close flush. It's out enough to get my hand in about halfway. So
okay,
that's the info.
Okay.
No question, but I'm sure there's a question in there that you can figure out.
And then you want to transition?
Yeah, I'm going to give.
Okay. So Schwintek slide not closing in all the way. That's going to be a little bit of a involved repair. So on your Schwinteks, you have the rack at the top and the rack on the bottom, and those are attached to the box that goes in and out. and then you have the motor up on top, and then there's a little bearing block with a spur gear in it and a long drive shaft, and on the bottom you've got another bearing block with a spur gear. So as the motor turns, so does the drive shaft, so does a spur gear. So if that slide room is coming in and it's not totally square with the side of the RV, what that means is the spur gears, you might call this, it's out of timing, but basically what that means is a spur gear, the top with respect to the top and the bottom rack are not aligned. So if you were to count over teeth, let's just say when it's in the middle, I'm going to come up with the number 20, okay? So you're 20 teeth from the end on the top, but maybe you're 25 from the end on the bottom. So in order to fix that, it's a little bit of a bear. You do need to take the H column off of the RV side. You need to, motor, and I've got a video. If you've watched, so here's a quick answer. Go to my video playlist and look for the slide rooms, and I've got a lot of videos on Schwintek specifically because we get a lot of those types of repairs. And if you've watched a few of those videos, you'll understand how to gain access to that bottom spur gear because it is meshed with, because the bearing block is meshed with the rack. You do need to pull the drive shaft up out of it and then get everything aligned and push it back in. And in the videos, I do show you some tips and tricks on how to do that. So it seems to me, now, having said that, what would be interesting is if it's out of square when it goes in, I would assume that's also out of square when it goes out. So look for that. If it's perfectly square when it goes out, but it's not square when it comes in, again, that would be an indication that you probably have a broken spur gear. And so then the spur is kind of turning and all these little, here's the rack and here's the spur gear. And if it's got a broken tooth, it might miss, and that might be another thing that causes it to mess up. So it sounds to me like that spur gear has failed because it's broken or he's not aligned with respect to the top rack.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, so the second question is, I have a GFCI plug in the kitchen that is not working, and it is causing the plugs downstream not to work either. The green light on the plug is on, so it has power, and pushing the reset button on it does nothing. Thank you for all you do. Love your channel. It has helped out on many repairs so far.
Thank you for that. On the GFCI, those do fail. Oh, okay, I'm learning which camera to look at. We have two cameras. So on the GFCI, so what I understand is you've got power going to it. Here's something that I would ask you to try to do. Now, it might be a little risky, but here's how I would do that. Something is preventing that GFCI from sealing in. So if you know which receptacles are downstream of it, unplug everything from those. And I'll tell you a story on that here in just a second. So unplug everything downstream that's already not working. Just unplug it and physically get it removed from that receptacle. At that point, see if that GFCI will reseal. If you have convinced yourself that there is absolutely nothing downstream on that circuit that's plugged into that circuit downstream of your GFCI and it still won't seal in, at that point I'd be looking at maybe replacing the GFCI. Now, so there's that, and I'll tell a story and then I'll tell you another troubleshooting tip on that. We did a job and it was a similar situation. GFCI would not seal in, and so I did the trick. I unplugged everything, and it still wouldn't seal in, And she had another technician there before me that had replaced the GFCI. And so the first thing that I noticed that the previous technician, there's a line and a load on the back of it, and he had wired those backwards, was the first thing. I'm like, oh, well, there's a problem. So we still put I fixed the wiring because the GFCI was brand new, and it still wouldn't seal in. And so in doing more diagnosis and digging deeper, we found out that there was some receptacle that we didn't know about that she had her boombox radio connected to. And so when I unplugged that, the GFCI did seal in, and then when I plugged in that boombox, it tripped it right away. And so the problem was the boombox was defective, and that's what was causing the GFCI not to seal. So if you're so that would be a takeaway from why your GFCI may not seal in. Let's make sure everything downstream is not connected to it. So I did mention that there's a little bit of risk to this. So the next thing so if you've done all that and you're convinced that nothing downstream is plugged in and it's still not sealing in, before you buy a new $15, $20 GFCI, let's do a couple little tests first. Turn off your power, take the GFCI out, and physically disconnect the wires that are downstream. So now you've got 120 volts directly feeding that GFCI right there. You don't have to put it all back in the box. This is where the risky part is. It would be the one, confirm that you have it wired correctly, that the wires that are hot feed the line side of that GFCI. With the load side totally physically disconnected, try it again. Turn on your power, see if it'll seal in. If it does, you know your GFCI is fine. And so that would be the first test you can perform. The second test is turn off your power again. So that first test was to see, is your GFCI going to seal in? Is it good to go? So then let's say that your GFCI is good, you prove it, you plug it in, it seals, or you push your reset button in, it seals, everything's good. Turn off your power, now you have your meter with you, put it in continuity mode, and check continuity on the load side of the wires that go down the wall. See if there's any resistance at all in those two wires. The GFCI is going to trip if there's, a 5 microamp difference. I don't, it's 5 microamp or 5 milliamp difference between the hot and the neutral. Okay. It's not there to trip if it sees too many amps. I mean, the RV could probably burn down and the GFCI would never trip because it's like, well, there was never a difference between the black and the white wire. So it's not a breaker. A lot of people think it's a breaker and it's going to trip if it receives, 5 amps or 15 amps. No, it'll melt itself. And only then when the black and the white touch each other or create that difference in voltage between themselves will it trip. So on that second test, if you're checking for continuity on your load side of your circuit, if you've got a beep or even not so much a beep, read your meter. What does the value say? If everything's open, those black and the white wires go downstream and everything's unplugged, it should be open loop. It should show OL on your meter, nothing. If you do get any value on there may be your problem, and now you need to start following the trail to figure out where that goes. So that would be my thought on the GFCI and how to help troubleshoot that.
Okay, and then the third question comes from Vivian. She isn't able to make it to the live stream. This is a Schwintek error code 91. Does that sound right?
9. I don't know what this.
Okay,
I need one of my cards.
Schwintek error code.
That's another on a thing on that. The cards that I'm making. Another one that I'm going to be making is on the Schwintek codes. 9, I think, is a short to ground or something.
She's got plenty of description for you.
Okay.
Okay. The trouble started. It's a whole story.
Okay, well,
Get ready.
I'm going to get some popcorn.
Yeah.
Okay.
The trouble started when I replaced my propane alarm. I first disconnected the negative cable from battery to shut DC to alarm.
Good.
Could not find a fuse that worked to disconnect. I noticed an error code flashing from the controller. I reset as per troubleshooting guide. Pressed switch in once and then in again to run slide back.
Okay, yeah.
No more codes, all working fine. Tried turning power off at pedestal, running only on battery, all good.
Okay.
Runs fine on shore power. Fast forward a month later, disconnected battery at battery switch to replace AC thermostat wall switch.
Okay.
Same error code, same recovery procedures, all works well. Yesterday, I cut power off and only switched battery to off, did not pull key out, to work on some plumbing lines over the converter. When I turned power back on and switched battery to on, no error codes flashed from the controller. So it has something to do with the battery switch. Anyway, it's working but drives me crazy not to know what is making that error code flash otherwise. Have you ever run into anything like this? Lippert claims that they've never encountered this, but I found numerous posts of others with same issue and no resolution. Is a resolution even needed if all is working and just needs a reset? Only happens when I disconnect from battery.
Okay, don't disconnect from battery. Problem solved. We do come across weird things like this. Okay, we do come across weird things like this, and it's really difficult to diagnose that if I'm not physically there. What I would be doing if I was there is I would take my meter. My meter has a min-max mode or babysitting mode. I've also got a meter. It's my higher-end Fluke meter that can actually be a data logger, and I can compare it to my phone and see the graph. What I would do in that instance, or maybe even I might use a data logger, is I would put my data logger or put my babysitting meter or just my meter with the min-max on the power feeding that module. And then I would start playing around. I'd start disconnecting. And certainly, if you disconnect your battery, the Schwintek module is going to die because you just took away all of its power. But it's how is it reintroduced into it? And off the top of my head, I don't know what the 09 code is. We get a lot of 06 and 08 codes, but I don't know what the 09 is. And that's where I'm serious. Remember I said there's 85 cards series that I want to make, and one of them is all the Schwintek fault codes and some recovery procedures and breakdowns and parts and stuff like that. So that's where those cards would come in handy. I could just pull one out here and look at what my '09 code is. So yeah, I would love to diagnose. That's something I really enjoy doing. Is I've got a strong electrical background, and just playing around with that. But off the top of my head, without being there, no, I would not know what might be causing that. So sorry, but yeah, if it's working, just don't turn on your battery and then do the reset.
Okay, so our first question from the live stream is from Richard, and he says, what would cause my slide out to creep out from position when closed?
What kind of slide system is it?
Richard, if you can let us know what kind of slide system.
Is it hydraulic? Is it electric? Is it a power gear? Is it a HWH? Is it a Schwintek? Yeah. So, but anyway, what would cause it to creep out? I would love to know what kind of slide room this is, because that tells my brain which path to take on that. I can start answering, but I might not.
Okay, I'll go to the second question, and then we'll circle back. Okay, so Anthony says, what is the time standard for a propane pressure drop down using a manometer? I know you start at 11 inches water column and bleed down to 8 inches water column. My propane system holds pressure for 5 minutes or so, then starts to drop. Is this still considered a passing test?
No. Your propane system. Okay, your propane system. Thank you. She's giving me like directions. We need little red lights on top of it.
Yeah.
So propane. Let's just talk propane for a second, because I think a lot of people could add value to this. If you're RV tech, I'll walk you through a little bit of the test procedure. If you're not, and you're not an RV tech, but you're a user of propane, this might be beneficial to you as well. So the propane is supposed to be a gas tight system. That means no leaks at all, period. It's zero tolerance for any leak at all in a propane system. So everything's supposed to be gas tight. When you pressurize your system, you're supposed to do 3 tests on it. The first test, and you do them in this order. The first test is what's called a 50% load test. That's called the operating pressure test. Okay, so the 3 tests is an operating pressure test, a timed pressure drop test. I got them out of order. Operating pressure test, lockup pressure test, and a time pressure drop test. Okay, so you have to do them in that order, and let me just run through them really quickly. I've done videos on it, and I don't want to get too deep. If you are going to be doing this type of testing on your RV in certain states, you can get in trouble by not being licensed to do this kind of work. Okay, so just file that away, and then once we talk about the 3 tests, we'll talk about, it was Anthony?
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll talk specifically about what might be a problem is with his gas tight system that's not holding pressure. So the operating pressure, we need to know what the operating pressure is first and foremost. Before you do anything else, let's get the operating pressure. Typically, the way you're supposed to do that is run around to every single LP appliance in your RV and write down the BTU at the input port. So then you have this big number, and then you divide it in half, and based off of that number is when you then say you're at 50%. So no one's ever going to do that. And so in our RV industry, the standard orifice size is a number 41 drill bit. Okay. Now, if you're working on a truck camper or a big 5th wheel or a big Class A with multiple furnaces, you could see how the 50% would be off. But in our industry, a number 41 hole is pretty much the standard size orifice that we drill. Now, on our tool offerings, we do have LP tap jigs. So again, you could go to our My RV Works page, you can go to our tools, and you can see all these jigs that I've made. I've made 5 variants for a standalone and for a quick connect. And the holes that I offer in those tap jigs is a number 41. And so I've since, that's going to be another card that I'm going to make, is all the orifice size and its corresponding BTU. Okay, so that'll be another card that will go with the LP tap jigs. So you start with the operating pressure test, and that is establishing your 50% load. And the reason they do that is because the furnace is going to consume a lot more propane than your refrigerator, your water heater, and all these other things. So the idea behind the operating pressure is the 50% load is if I have my stove, I'm cooking a pot of beans, I've got biscuits in the oven on propane, my water heater's making water on propane, and my refrigerator's also on propane, do I still have enough pressure in my entire system to run the furnace? Okay, so that's where that operating pressure comes in. So you set your operating pressure to 11 inches of water column, which is about 6 ounces of pressure. Okay, so the first thing you do is you're going to set your operating pressure, 50% of your load. Who's going to run around and check all that? I'm not. I'm just going to go with a number 41 hole because that's our standard. So you set your manometer with so on our test leads that we make, I open up the cascock, and actually I'm venting propane out, okay? And then I'm looking at my manometer, and I'm going to set that right there to 11 inches of water column, okay? Then I close that off, and then immediately after you do your operating pressure, you can then look at your lockout pressure test on the exact same manometer. You didn't have to go anywhere. You shut it down, and it should not go over 14, okay? That's your lockup. What a lot of people do that I've seen is they'll set their lockup pressure first, and then they'll set their operating pressure, and that's backwards. You do your operating pressure first. 50% of your LP is flowing out of the line. You set your regulator to that, and then you close that so it's pressurized 100%. And now you're actually asking the regulator how much is the maximum you're going to allow to come through. If it ever goes over 15 psi, then that's an automatic fail. You must at that point replace your regulator. Okay, so you've done your operating pressure, you've adjusted your regulator to operating pressure, then you have shut down that valve, and now you're going to do your regulator lockup test. So those are the two tests you must perform in that order, and that's right out of NFPA 1192, that chapter 5, if I'm not mistaken. There's a whole, everything I'm saying is right out of the NFPA. So if you want to challenge what I'm saying to you, then I'm not the one you need to challenge. You really need to challenge the NFPA, because if you think there should be another way, great, I love you. Go talk to the NFPA, don't talk to me. So the next test is your time to pressure drop test. The time pressure drop test is a 3-minute test, and you can do that at a stove if you wanted to. I usually do it at a refrigerator outside. And so, Anthony, to your question, what you're going to do is you're going to start off at your lockup pressure test, and you're going to open up a stove butt, or if you're using one of our test leads, I can do it all there at the refrigerator, open it up. And I'm watching that manometer, because there's going to be a lot of head pressure up at the top, and I want that head pressure to bleed off. So it might take an interval of time for all that head pressure to drop off, which is going to get back to the question that you had. So it might take 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and nothing's happening, but you hear the thing hissing out, hissing out, hissing out. All of a sudden it'll buck, and you'll start to see the pressure start to drop. You're supposed to get that around, I don't know, I'm shooting for like 8 inches of water column. And so when you get to 8 inches of water column, that's when you shut everything down, and you watch that for 3 minutes. Okay. Now, when you do that test, it's important that your entire system has been in its area for a long time. If it's in a shop bay, if it's out in a field, if it's a customer's house, that is to say, you wouldn't bring it out from a hot sunny day field into a shop with a shade, because then the gas law comes into effect, and now you have contraction and expansion of your gases. So it's a 3-minute test, and once you get it down to about 8 inches of water column, you start your 3 minutes, and it shouldn't deviate. If the pressure starts to go up, that means that the regulator, because you've closed off your service valve, right? I mean, I forgot to mention that, but you're going to close off your service valve, and if your pressure starts to go up, then there's something in that service valve that didn't seat properly, and it's bleeding through. If the pressure starts to go down, then you have a leak somewhere, and you need to go find that leak. So in your instance, from what I understand, what Tricia read, you're doing the time pressure drop test, and it takes it a while before it actually bleeds out. And that's all that head pressure I was talking about. And you can do this test by bleeding out. I guess what I'm saying is if you don't bleed it out first and get it to about 8 inches of water column, then it could give you a false indication that everything's fine. You do need to bring it down to the middle position, and then at that point, see if it goes up or it goes down. So if it's going down, it sounds like you got a leak. And that's when you get I use a gas sniffer on our Amazon links. On that same link on our website, you can look at our Amazon store, and then I've got that broken up into different categories. And on the categories, you can click on LP, I think is what I've called that category. And that's where you can see the tools that I use. The one I'm using now for gas sniffing is the Klein. I like the Klein better than the one that I was using that was red. And the thing I like about the Klein, it's got a high and a low, so I can do like high and just or like low sensitivity and just kind of sniff around. And if it finds something, then I can go to high sensitivity and I can really pinpoint it. And then I get my better bubble out, that little blue stuff, and I put that around the spot, and I find my leak that way. So a little bit of a long answer for you, but I really wanted to dive into some of the propane stuff. If you're doing a lot of propane work, make sure you're licensed in your state that you're doing it. And if you are a tech, I really would invite you to check out the tools that I make for you on LP, because I've rated 5 different ways to tap into the systems. And you can get those on our website, My RV Works. Go to our tools that I make, and you'll see all these tap jigs. I've got some standalone ones, and I've got some for quick connect. And then on our Amazon links, we've got a whole bunch of stuff there as well. So hope that helped answer the question. What do we think?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. A lot of information, but hopefully it really helped.
Okay, so I want to give a couple of... first I want to say... if you like this video, or if there's a particular video that you've watched that has really helped you, go ahead and share it with people. So that's kind of what gets our content out there. And then I wanted to give a couple of shout outs. So Jason said, you helped me reset the propane lockout on my fridge a few months back. So that's great.
I love to hear that, guys. Thank you.
And then let's see, RV Travel said, love all your videos, and so thank you.
Thanks, guys. It means a lot. I put the stuff out. I never hear back from people, so it's good to hear that it's helping you guys.
You do, but I get all of the responses.
She gets them all. I get a little bit of time here and there to kind of just scan through them real quick, and I get all the haters. Yeah.
And then John said, thank you so much for all the answers on the GFCI plug issue. So that was his question. So
okay. Hope that helped.
Okay, so Richard was the one with the slide. He says he's not quite sure what kind of slide system. He says there are a geared square bar underneath the slide out.
Okay, it's power gear.
So, and then his question was, what would cause my slide out to creep out from the front position when closed?
Okay, so if you've got the square bar, I did a video on one of those things, the square bars, you can kind of get it. So those, there's two different types. One's got a brake and one does not have the brake. So if you've got the one that's supposed to have a brake, so that is to say there's an extra click sound you hear when your slide room's closing. You'll hear this audible click sound coming from the motor. So if it's sliding out, I would ask you to check to make sure that the brake is engaging. On some of those, also, if you need to find your motor, there's going to be like a little rubber boot that's got like a little duck bill off the thing. That might also be your brake, and it might be a very, very, very simple solution that you have. So it all starts with you finding the motor. You're going to have one motor on one side of the ram. The other ram just kind of goes along on a ride with that little square drive shaft. So on your motor, it should have a rubber, this is the old power gear system, it should have the old rubber boot over it with a duckbill sticking out of it. And if you feel that duckbill part of that rubber boot, you'll find what they do is they have, can you see my fingers? Yeah, okay. They have like two little tabs, metal tabs, and they can slide on top of each other. They're made to kind of slide on top of each other. And if they slide on top of each other, then that releases the brake. And so it may be very possible, Richard, that yours has been released, and then all you have to do is just work the little rubber duckbill and kind of get them to unconnect and see if that doesn't lock that back in place. So other than that, those motors are really torquey. So if you don't have the motor, from my experience, from what you're explaining, it sounds like the duckbill metal pieces are on top of each other. You need to separate them on that system. And that was good. I wanted to know what he had, because I could go off talk about a Schwintek or an HWH or any of these other systems. But it sounds like yours might be that the motor duckbill thing needs to be released. And if it is released and it's still doing it, then it may be the motor brake inside is just not engaging itself. We've seen that too. Had to replace it.
All right. Okay, so our next question is from Michelle, and she says, what do you do when you have an old furnace with an external relay and the board fails? How do you rewire it?
External relay and the board fails. So this would be the external relay. That's going to be your, I'm over here now. So I'm going to assume this is going to be an Atwood Hydroflame, probably. It doesn't matter.
I'm sorry. That was Mitchell. I don't know. My eyes aren't working.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Mitchell, if you want to clarify what kind.
It's probably an old Hydroflame. They had the on delay, off delay relay mounted on the thing. And so from what I understand, your question, you have probably a fan 50 plus pins board, and it has all that built onto the board, and you want to bypass the relay. That's doable. I'd love to send you a wiring diagram, but it's doable. Or you could just leave that on there, and you can. Is the relay working? If the relay is working, leave it on there, and then you could just go with a dinosaur board. I believe it's called a UIB 64 or I'm trying to remember part numbers. Back to my little index cards, right? That's why you have to keep all this stuff in your head. So that relay, let me try to answer it this way. If the relay is working fine and you can leave that on there, wonderful, because your board, there's going to be a instant fire jumper you can snip off, and you can leave that relay in place and not have to rewire anything. Okay, but if you want to rewire it and have the board do all the heavy lifting, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be an 18-second on delay and about a 90-second off delay, whether it goes through that external relay. They're about $50 or the board does it. So let's see, on that board, let's see, the fan is the motor, the blower is going to connect to one of those pins. Okay, so you got 4 pins on your relay. So I'm going to hold it well, here, I'll just talk you through it. On the pins, one of them is going to have plus 12 all the time. And the opposite side of that plus 12 pin is the one that feeds the motor. Okay, so that motor, the plus one that's all fed all the time, you can kind of orphan that one. You don't need him anymore. And then the one opposite that goes directly to your blower motor, you can move that over to your board. Okay, so that took care of 2 of your wires. The one that's got 12 on all the time, just cut it, snip it, orphan it in place. Don't let it touch anything it's not supposed to. And then the other bigger wire that goes directly to your motor, move that one over to your new board, and it's going to say blower on it. It's going to be a little bit of a bigger spade on your board. So that took care of 2 of your wires. That leaves 2 wires. The other 2 wires, one of them's going to always be ground all the time. It's always going to be ground. Okay, you can orphan that one in place. And then the other side of that one is going to be the signal that comes from your thermostat. And a lot of times that's daisy chained also, but you could take that blue, usually it's blue, but sometimes they change colors. But the opposite side of that wire, you can move that also over to your board. Usually that comes in on the little white pin that plugs into it. I think there's like 4 wires on this white connector. And it may already be there, and they daisy chained off of that to feed this thing coming back from the thermostat. So of the 4 wires on this relay, there's really only 2 that you need to move. One of the ones that you can forget about is 12 volts plus all the time. And the other one that you can forget about is the one that's that's minus all the time. Okay, that leaves one that goes to the fan directly. Move that over to your board where it says blower, and one's going to come back from the thermostat. Great, move that over to the board, and you can get over to that relay. Okay, so hope that helped.
Okay, and I hope this doesn't change anything. He said hydro flame and the relay failed. New board has a fan relay. Then
follow what I just said. Great. With of the 4 wires, you only need to move 2. The one that goes to the fan goes to your board. It'll say blower on it. And the other one is going to be feeding the thermostat. And I think your board already has that signal coming to it. So really, I guess you just need to move 1 wire. So find the wire that goes to the blower motor and move that over to the board that says blower, and you might be done.
Cool.
You might be done.
That'd be easy.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question, Paul says, how would you recommend a brand new mobile business to market themselves? And we just talked about that in our series, right? Seminars?
Yeah. This is a fun one. You want to move back over here? Yay. Okay. My go-to answer is seminars. Perform seminars. Okay. But what Trisha and I are doing that you might find value in, and anybody else listening, is for our Patreons. So YouTube's free, doesn't cost anything. And after we do our live stream here, for those of you on Patreon at any level, we go an additional hour, right?
About another Patreon, hour? About like 45 minutes.
45 minutes to an hour, and then we go to dinner. So I'll answer your question. What's his name?
Paul.
Okay, Paul. So I'm going to answer Paul's question, but we're trying to build value on our Patreon level. I mean, I'm a working man. I still have bills to pay, and Amazon and YouTube you don't have to pay anything for it. You're getting great content. So we would love it if you would join us over on Patreon and really, really trying to build that content, because that's something that you're paying into and we're trying to give back to you. So on our Patreon, if we run out of time today, because we locked this down to an hour, because it's an hour of our time that we're just sewing into you guys. But on our Patreon side, at any level, we go in another 45 minutes. So you get us for an hour and 45 minutes if you want to. We take about a 50-minute break to go potty and drink some water. But another thing we do on our Patreon side that we've come out with for those on our higher tiers, the $15 a month tier and the $25 a month tier, is Trisha and I are putting together an entire series on how to start, build, maintain, and operate a mobile RV service business. So every week we're coming out with new content on that channel on our Patreon side. We've done 9 episodes so far. We try to come out with one every week. I think we missed a week. But we're constantly coming out with more content, and we've got about 30 or 40 episodes that we're going to be recording.
Yeah, and more, I mean, as people give comments and ask questions, we have more content that we think about.
So and why we came up with that, Paul, is because we've gotten a lot of comments from people. I did not grow up being an RV technician. And so I have a whole other previous career that I did that I was very, very good at. And I decided to do this as a second. As I got older, I wanted to be a dad, and I decided that this is something that I want to do, that I could do. And it's fun, and it's rewarding, and it's supporting my family. And so a lot of people were reaching out to us saying, how did you get started? And they were asking a lot of questions, like, how do you get started? Like what you're asking, Paul. And so what I found for me is the best thing that I could do is perform seminars at RV clubs, rallies, in your area. Just find an RV park that's got a clubhouse, reach out to them and ask them if they would mind if you did a seminar. It's wintertime. I don't know exactly where you are, but here. So do a seminar on how to camp in your RV in the wintertime. Do a seminar on furnaces. I've done seminars on slide rooms. I've done seminars on all kinds of topics. And so what that does, and I don't charge for those seminars, and I would not charge for those seminars. But here I am an RVer, right? And I find out about this thing. Now, some of the RV parks will only open it up to the people that are in their park, and we found that some of them will open up to anybody and everybody. There may be a restaurant or a Lions Club or a Elks that might allow you to come in and do a seminar. We've even looked at going into the library. We've got a local restaurant that'll give us a back room for free to do a seminar. That was something we're going to do like once a month on a rotation. Just every month we're going to just like these live streams we're doing here. So here I am, an RV owner, and I need some work done. This is the best opportunity that I can to get to know you, to ask you questions, to find out if you're the real deal. We all know there's a lot of crooks out there, and there's a lot of RV techs that you call, they come out and do the job, they get your money, and you never hear from them again, and they ghost you. And so this is a way you drive a stake in the ground. You let people know, I am here, I'm an expert in this, what I'm talking about, hire me to do the job. And you're building value in your business to let people know, hey, this is the real guy. I want you to come work on my RV. I trust you now. I've gotten to know you a little bit. And every seminar we've ever done, there's always people standing up when we're done and wanting to get on the schedule list. Now, some of the best practices we do with that is I prepare the very first time I did a seminar, I had like pages and pages of notes. And the thing went on for 3 hours, but nobody minded. It was okay. And then after that, we pared the seminars way back. I didn't try to cover as much information. I tried to scale it back to just 1 or 2 topics. And then I opened up for Q&A. And so my comments might last 15, 20 minutes, but the Q&A might go on for another hour or 2. And there's so much value in that Q&A where they get to ask you some questions, kind of like you're doing with me right now. So I would imagine if you're having the feeling, anybody watching this, like, hey, I want to hire my RV Works to come out and work because that guy knows what he's doing. That's what you want to create in that customer, and that's how you do it through seminars. In your local area, right in your backyard, these are going to be your customers. And if they don't have a problem, they know who they're going to call if they do need some help. So I can't stress seminars enough. We've done some seminars at rallies. We've done some seminars at restaurants. We've done some seminars at RV parks. So reach out for that and see if that doesn't help you guys out. Oh, we have some graphics on there now.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Okay, so Eugene asks, I have a 4-door Dometic refrigerator that causes the shore power GFCI to trip if the refrigerator is plugged into its 120 volt outlet in the RV.
Okay. The first thing I would have you check is the what's it called? The heating element. Okay. So here's how you would test this really quick. It's a go, no go. Okay, you're going to gain access to the back control board of your refrigerator. And a question I would like to ask is, does it trip only, so you're plugged in, but is your refrigerator trying to create heat at that time? So there's 2 ways you could troubleshoot this thing. If your refrigerator is satisfied and it doesn't need to cool itself, it's happy. Nothing needs to be on. He's totally cold. Peas are frozen. Beer is cold. Everything's great. And you plug it into AC and it trips at that point, then that would tell us that there's something wrong with your control board. Okay. Now, if you plug it in and it doesn't trip, but then when that refrigerator tries to start itself on by heating the electric heating element and it trips, well, that tells us right away there's something wrong with your electric heating element. Okay. So what I would ask you to do is first of all, if your refrigerator is satisfied, not trying to cool itself at all, and it trips, control board. But let's take this one step farther. So what I want you to do is go out to the outside, take off your access panel, take off the cover, and then over where your boiler stack is, follow, it's usually a blue and a black, or maybe two blacks, wires down to the control board. And polarity does not matter on those, but unplug that. Okay, so now I have the two wires that go to my heating element. Now we've done a video on this. If you go to our playlist on our YouTube channel and go to the refrigerator playlist, you'll see one. I don't remember what I called it. It was maybe a year or two ago that I did this one, but it was refrigerator doesn't work on AC. And so I think I demonstrate the control board and the wires I'm talking about, but you're going to unplug those things. And then try to see if your refrigerator will trip then. If your refrigerator will not trip when the heating element is unplugged from it, well, then your control board's probably okay. And you can take your meter and put it in AC mode and touch those two pins that you just unplugged it from. You should have 120 volts at that point. And right above that, you'll see a little black relay. And then that black relay is what's doing the switching. And so the AC circuit through that control board comes in on the left-hand side usually. It goes through the fuse, and then it goes through that black relay, and then it comes out to those two little pins. It's really a simple circuit. Then you need to know the wattage of your heating element. Well, a lot of them are 350 watts, but you really need to know. And again, on our website, you can go to our website resources tab, and on our resources tab, we have all the service manuals. And then you can sort that by refrigerator, and then, or you just up in the search window of that, you can type in your refrigerator and see if you don't find it. Don't be surprised. I rename a lot of those manuals, and they might have little X's in them, because there's one manual that might cover like 10 different, models. And so I just put little X's in there. So if the first or the second digit are yours, then it's a good chance that those little X's mean that you're covered in there. But, you need to gain access to your service manual so you can get the wattage of your heating element that is designed for your refrigerator. Okay, I have done service calls before where they're saying that it doesn't perform very well on AC power, and lo and behold, we find out that the last place that worked on it, they put the wrong wattage heating element in. Okay, so now that you know your heating element, we can do Ohm's law, Watt's laws. I use an app on my phone to determine the ohms value that I'm supposed to get at room temperature. If the thing's been glowing red hot, you can't really check ohms. You need this thing to be room temperature. And so then you take your meter, put it in continuity ohms mode, connect it to those two little wires that you just unplugged from your heating element, and read a value. It should be plus or minus 10% of what it's supposed to be. So if you're tripping your GFCI, more than likely it's a heating element. And if you're going to replace a heating element, that would be how you would test to see if it's good. Normally they come in around 40 ohms, blah, blah, but I never just say it's 40 ohms. I might do that as a gut check just to kind of see, am I like open loop or I'm like way out. But so those would be my thoughts on your heating element, on your refrigerator on AC, if it's tripping the GFCI that way. Something's not happy. So it could be your heating element.
Okay.
Are we liking this 2-camera thing? Let us know.
I do.
Okay, she does.
I'm not even a viewer.
It's more clicking that she has to do, but...
Okay, so Emily is back, and we don't really... I think Anne's pretty much addressed her question in the comments, but just wanted to give a shout out to her. She was the one that had the whole mice thing, and she did that really like creative ducting.
Yes,
she did a great job with that.
Yeah.
So,
great.
But the issue isn't completely resolved. So she's looking for
cats.
Yeah. So Anne just referred her to Suburban directly for part numbers. Is that your suggestion? If somebody
does she need part numbers? What is it that she needs?
She says the main fan part number for SF35FQ.
I gave her the manual.
Yeah, I need my cards.
So she was, it's just that the sellers on eBay have like different part numbers, and I want to say that, okay. Anne, you've said that like, you have to be really careful about that because they'll
do. Yeah, I can mention.
Just talk about like some best practices.
So I'll mention this. So for that, again, I just mentioned it in the last answer, but go to our website resources tab, and you could find your furnace, and then in those service manuals is going to be the parts. And now on the Suburban, a lot of the parts. So you start with a part number, but today that part number is not the same. But if you enter that part number, it's very possible that you're going to go to, that part number's changed to this, that part number's changed to this. But at least you started with the original part number. I know that now you have a Suburban, but I know on the Atwoods, they are really trying to move out a lot of the older furnaces that have been in the industry for like 20 or 30 years. If a furnace has been running for 20, 30 years in these RVs, it's time to replace it. There's little small cracks that develop inside of the heat exchanger. We've done some videos, and I've got one in my shop that I use for show and tell. Those little micro cracks, you don't want that, because now you're getting carbon monoxide into your RV. And so if I was a manufacturer of these parts, I would basically destroy a machine that makes a critical part, so it's no longer available, and you have to buy a new furnace. So on the Atwood furnaces, I know, for example, the flame spreader, that like shoehorn looking tail, that's one of the parts that you can no longer get for certain furnace models. I think the 8525 comes to mind. So you're going to say, I'm going to just, for purposes of instruction, I'm going to pick on the Hydroflame, the Atwood Hydroflame 8525. So it's 25,000 BTU furnace, 85 model, came out in 1985, but they've been made them for years. But if your flame spreader, the thing the burner goes through and puts all these holes in it, if that burns a hole in it, and I've got videos of those, you can't get that part anymore. But if you go do a search on Amazon, or somebody's like, oh yeah, we got one, it'll work. And so you get it, lo and behold, it won't work. And if you were to look at that flame spreader and look inside of it, you're going to see quite an infrastructure inside of these things. There's screens within screens and little lances and throats and all this kind of stuff. If you're looking at the outside, you see this pressed metal with holes, like easy, but there's a lot more going on inside of that. The angle that it bends, the size of the holes. And so a lot of these ones that they're making that they say that will work for it, they won't. And so we get called on service calls. People will have watched our video, they would have made their own repair, and they would have bought this flame spreader. It said it was going to work. But if you go directly to, back then Atwood, today Dometic, if you go to Dometic and try to look for that part number, it's going to say obsolete, no longer available. So it's interesting that Dometic says that part is no longer available, it's obsolete. But I got a clown over here that's selling them off the back of his truck saying it'll work. So who are you going to believe? The manufacturer or the guy trying to sell them at the back? It's interesting to me that a lot of these companies that are selling these ones that they say will work, they don't accept any returns. So it's like a snake oil. So anyway, back to the Suburban question. Again, the best place to find these part numbers and stuff, it's the same place I go to, guys, is I use our manuals off of our website. Now I don't have to go to my website to get them because I've downloaded them all. And these are where I'm making a lot of the cards from, a lot of this type of information, these little cards we started off with the things. I don't want to flood my tool bag, but if I had them clipped on there's certain key pieces that I need. It's the same parts that break. It'd be great if I had a part number and a QR code. I could just scan it and go right to it. And so that's my vision for these cards that I'm making for you guys. But yeah, let's go to the manual. Let's find the exact part number that we need. And let's do a search for that. And don't be surprised if the part number has changed. But and that's why it's important to not only have your model number, but you need your serial number as well. On the Suburban serial number, the first 2 digits are the year that it was made. And so you need to know what year it was made. So there's a lot of information in that serial number that they need as well. And that's a whole other clue on trying to get these parts. If they just say, oh, it'll work for all SF35 furnaces. Well, I know for a fact that's a lie, because there are breaks in the serial number where it's like, before this serial number you need this part number, after this serial number you need that part number. And so if there's people saying it'll work for all, when I know for a fact that the serial number has a break in it, then they're lying. And don't be a sucker and buy the part. You need to know the model number and the serial number. And if they're telling you that it'll work and they don't ask you for the serial number, I would be very suspicious of buying a part from that vendor.
Okay, we're gearing down to the end, so we've got a few more questions.
Join Patreon and join us over there.
So see if you can answer them quickly.
Okay, I'm in the hot seat.
Okay, Howard says, I have a Hydro Hot for my Monaco floor heat 2 zones. How do you troubleshoot the control board?
The control board, is this the green electronics control board?
I don't know, but Howard, you can,
I'm going to assume if he's got the Hydro Hot, I'm assuming it's either going to be the ice cube relays or the green electronics control board. Really kind of simple. Don't be intimidated by this big green board. Okay. It's all about the green plugs, where everything plugs into it. Okay. Now the first thing I would mention is there's jumpers on those boards. So if you got a new board, you need to make sure the jumpers match your model. But so let's start in the upper one. It's called J1, J2, J3, J4. J1 is where all of the signals coming from your thermostat come into the green electronics control board. And if you look closely on the silk screening, you're going to see where it says thermostat 1 down to thermostat 5. So also on J1, you got signals coming in, and then you have signals going out that are going to turn on all your cozy heaters.
Green board.
Green board?
Yeah.
Okay, so stay with me on this. That's your J1 connector. So the J1 connector, you yourself can actually take your meter and check the terminal or thermostat 1, thermostat 2 to see if there's 12 volts coming and going. Okay, so the J1 is going to send 12 volts out of the green board into the coach to get connected, and it's going to come back. And then when the board decides that it's at temperature, then it will turn on your cozy heater. That's a J1. J2 down below, that's the one that we make our aqua box on, and I love those boxes. I made one for myself. The J2 plug, which is a smaller 8-pin plug on the bottom, that's the one that your switch is on the inside, your electrical heat, your engine preheat, and your diesel burner, and then your little status light. That all comes from that J2 port. So if you do a lot with the AquaHot, we've even got customers that have AquaHot that buy our box. You could get that at myrvworks.com, click on the button for our tools, and you'll see this little black box that I make for you guys that you just unplug that and plug mine in, and you can troubleshoot it from right there. That moves us up to the J3 plug, which is the upper right-hand corner. The first one, I think, is low-level cutout, and then you have thermostat, and then you start getting into other signals that are coming from the AquaHot into that green board. Some of those would even include communications down to your diesel electronics control board. But most of the ones that talk to your diesel control burner, that big $800 module that slides, is the J4 plug. It's going to have a C7 and a C3. I'm going off of memory here. So the electronics control boards, I've only replaced like 2 in my entire time working on these AquaHots. Usually you test the signals. So you then on the go-to for those is in the upper right-hand corner. So that's going to be your JP3 connector in the upper right-hand corner. The top one, I think it's LLCO and then T-stat, if I'm not mistaken. I'm doing this all from memory now. You then can take a little piece of wire and jumper that to simulate that it's a good signal. And that's a way to go, no-go test if it's your leveling switch. We just did a video, I'm remembering. We just did a video not even a couple weeks ago where I was working on an AquaHot, and I did a close-up on the board. And so that's how I would troubleshoot that thing. Not so much troubleshooting the green electronics control board, because that's either a pass-fail. It's either go or doesn't. But it's always the signals coming into that board that you need to verify, making sure that the signals are right. The board's going to do what it's programmed to do, but if the signals aren't there, is where you get issues. When I'm diagnosing an AquaHot, I usually don't start at the green board. I usually start at that diesel control board, okay? And that's what my cards are all about. And the cards flip you through the 7 steps that I go through to make sure that module's good. So those cards are great. We've got quite a few. We could get with Trisha to get some ordered. But that information is also on our website. I feel like I'm like a sales guy, but it's also on our website. We've got so many resources for everybody on our website. Go over to our resources tab, go to our service manuals and sort for AquaHot. And you can get it from AquaHot too. Some of these manuals I got from the AquaHot site. Some of them I got through classes that I've taken. So not all of them are on the AquaHot site. So we've got manuals that you can't get on the AquaHot site. How about that? But the last thing I'll mention is for the electronics control board, there's a troubleshooting flow chart that I have on our website for under the AquaHot category, where it's like a flow chart and it'll just walk you through everything. So hope that helps out.
Okay, so Larry has a 15-year-old Norcold absorption, continues to work fine in my Tiffin motorhome. Do you think it's smart to keep it or safer to replace it? What would you do?
If it's working fine, I would keep it. Yeah, if it's working fine, there's no point in replacing that at all. Those things will work indefinitely. I'm going to do it again on our website, on our resources tab. This one I'm going to send you to the annual service inspection sheets. So a couple of years ago, I created these little sheets. I tried to keep it to 1 page. So this time, don't go to the service manuals, go to the check sheets. And just everybody can go print those out. I did one for a furnace, I did one for a water heater, did one for a refrigerator. And I had plans on doing many, many more of those, and now I'm getting into the tech cards. But so print that out. It's free, it's a PDF. Print that out and just go through that check sheet for your refrigerator. And if everything's in spec, there's no reason at all to replace that thing. So just make sure it's got good ventilation, and you can use your hands to feel the windy, coily things in the burner if it's running, and they should be similar, about 10-degree difference in them. But it's going to be about 100 and something degrees, so don't burn yourself. But they should be pretty close to temperature on those. But yeah, I don't see any benefit of replacing a refrigerator if it's working just fine. And in that instance, you wouldn't replace the whole refrigerator. You would just replace the cooling unit. So if the cooling unit's fine, there's no reason to replace it. Okay.
All right. So thanks to Barry. He says, you saved my bacon on a Schwintek slide failure.
Oh, so, outstanding.
Thanks, Barry, for letting us know. And then RV Travel says, you created a tool to show the brakes were engaging or not. Yeah. Do you have the tool that we can make? So guys, this is one we've gotten quite a few people that have reached out about it. And I personally feel like I don't know the complexity of getting the tool out in the market. So let's go to Darren for that. But it's possible.
This is, yes.
And then people ask if they can have like the schematics or how did you do it and all of that. Okay. And that's kind of,
yes, that'll be a tool we'll be offering. Yes, the answer is yes. My whole background was I was a controls engineer, automation engineer. So for me to make that tool was something I just made out of spare parts. More than happy to share the schematics. It's not complicated. Specifically what I used, if you're into automation, I used a product from Siemens called a Logo, L-O-G-O. A Siemens Logo is the product that I'm using, but who's going to go spend $200 on a little programmable relay to do that? So what I've gotten is I was working with a vendor contractor. I don't know how much into the story I want to go, but basically I was going to be offering that tool like a year ago. And I ran into an engineer who said that they could help me develop that product. And we spent the better part of 14 months and $8,000 out of my pocket to develop this tool for you guys. And it was just ran into delays, redesigns. And I'm thinking to myself, I could have done this by now. Why am I paying this person to keep redesigning it and all these types of things? So I'm not upset with the person because I do understand that there was a chip shortage, but it was getting a lot more complicated than it needed to be. The challenge we have with that tool is the inrush that we have is it needs to be able to handle 30 amps. Okay, so I can design the tool. My tool that I made that does the on-off every 2 seconds. You could do a flip-flop relay, just make sure that it's going through like a relay that can handle 30 amps, okay? Why 30 amps? Because if you've got a triple axle trailer that's pulling all those amps, you don't want to melt your things, okay? So, yes, I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into the design of that, and then I finally pulled the plug on it. So I'm out $8,000 in 14 months of your time and my time on a tool that should have been put out about a year ago. So I designed a control board and I sent it to China because they could do these things for like real cheap. And I have, I think, 50 of these little boards that are exactly what we need. And so now I've got 50 of these boards that have the relay on it that can handle the DC inrush, the DC current. And so now what I need to do is just put that in a nice little package and I'll have 50 of them that I can offer you, but don't hold me to a time yet. But it's something that I'm working on because there was a lot of interest in it. And I know for me, that's a tool that I use when I'm working on brakes by myself. And it's just so great to be able to do that. And so that's what I'll say. I could go on more and more because it was going to have like a Bluetooth interface to your smartphone, all that kind of stuff. But we're going to get into that much later. So let's just see if we can get some tool out to your hands. And I've got enough to make 50, but I need the time to put them in a package because right now the thing's just an ugly motherboard.
Okay, and sorry to anybody who's reached out and asked for a schematic, and I told you couldn't have one because apparently
it's a simple circuit. I mean, the thing is you're getting your power directly from the pigtail, which then gets its power from the onboard battery, and that was one of the tests. So this thing was more than just an easy flip flop. The tool that I made did so much more than just the brake on off. That was just one of the features that it did. I had toggle switches on it where I can check the brake lights, the marker lights, the blinkers. And I built it when I was at the dealership because we're going to move me back over here.
Sorry.
So I built that when I was at the dealership because we would get these trailers where people had wired them backwards. And I don't blame them for wiring them backwards because did you guys know that there's at least there's actually technically 4, but there's at least 2 standards for that 7-way. The circuits land on the same exact pinpoints, but the color of the wire changes, whether it's SAE or it's the RV standard. And so the guys that are mechanics or work in that arena, they were always wiring to the SAE standard. Using the color of the wire is where they were wiring it. And then you go to connect, they would connect a tow vehicle that way. And then they would connect the pigtail on their RV the same way. Well, then all of a sudden they go to the left blinker and the marker lights are blinking, and it was just a mess. And but there's two standards you need to be aware of. The SAE standard and the RV standard. The circuits are the same. The upper right is always 12 volts, and then you've got, I won't go through them, I did a whole video on that. So the circuits are the same, but the color of the wire changes, okay? And anyway, so the box I made at the dealership had toggle switches, and I made the left blinker blink fast and the right blinker blink slow, and I could flip switches, and if the left one was blinking fast, I knew exactly what the problem was. And then I did a thing called a light show where I turned it on and the lights would do a dance that was a very predictable, repeatable pattern, and I could just walk around. And part of that was to turn all the lights on. I could look for burned out bulbs when I'm doing my PDI. And then one feature that I added to that whole thing was the 2-second on-off brake check. And I could take my little putty knife and hold it up next to the brake drum, see if it held and disconnected, held and disconnected. Because you don't want to leave your brakes on all the time. It's you'll burn them up. So a 50% duty cycle was a good system for that, and it worked great. A lot of times I'm working on brakes and I could just leave that on and leave it on all day if I needed to, because it's a 50% duty cycle, and I could start working on it. Okay, power, no power, power, no power. And you could jack up the wheel and spin the wheel, and it'll every 2 seconds it'll stop itself. So it's got a lot of great features. Like I said, I did the whole thing in a programmable relay called a Siemens logo, and I don't know that I would do that. That's why I don't know that I would do that today, but maybe I will. I've got all these Arduinos I'm playing around with. Maybe I'll do it in our nice little Arduino package and let that drive the big 30 amp relay thing. So we'll see what I come up with, but I'm excited about it.
Okay, so we're past our time.
Oh,
so
sorry.
Just give maybe like 1 sentence answers.
Okay, 1 sentence.
Okay.
Channel my brevity.
Hector says, good evening, guys. Newbie in RVing from South Texas. Have a question on solar. Is it better to connect solar charger to battery or converter?
Solar is going to go, 1 second. Okay. Solar needs to go through the controller that goes to the battery.
Okay. Thank you. Wow, that was good.
Wow.
Okay.
Points.
Barry says, RV outlets and electrical boxes in my Tiffin are only 1 3/4 inch deep, and the method of connecting the wires and the outlets is by pressing the wire into a V-style connector. Is there a better outlet?
Okay. Those would be your typical self-contained receptacles. The solution would be to go get a wire mold box, and it's going to bump out from the wall about a 1/2 inch. But if you wanted to do your residential type, and the reason for that is because according to code, you cannot have like a DC circuit. Yeah, you can leave those wires on the wall, but an AC circuit, you cannot have a receptacle outside of its enclosure. So the receptacle must be in an enclosure. So that's where you get your wire mold box that's going to move it away from the wall about a 1/2 inch. And then you would put your old work box or new work box in, and then you would put it in there. But your AC receptacle must be in an enclosure, and that's why they came out with the self-contained receptacles. Nothing wrong with the self-contained receptacles. I use quite a few of them, and watch the video I did on. Came out like maybe a month ago where I did a water heater R&R, and it was snowing. Because in that video, I had to put one of those receptacles in for that water heater, and I show you the trick on how to seat those wires inside. Okay, that was more than 1 second, or 1 sentence.
No, you did great. Okay, that's it. We are going to finish up and head over to Patreon. Do you have any other things?
Thanks for watching, and thanks for helping us go over 100,000. We have no control over what you guys do with this content. We just put it out there. So the fact that you guys are out there sharing it with your friends, watching it, subscribing, that really means a lot. And it inspires us to keep coming out with more content. Because you guys are thumbing us up, because you guys are sharing it with your friends, because you guys are giving us comments and sewing into us, I think it inspires us to do more for you guys. And like I said earlier, we are trying to build our Patreon channel because that's a way that we can actually monetize our efforts.
Yeah, I mean, we're monetized on YouTube, but it's not a primary income.
Yeah,
it
I'm
never
a businessman. I need to get compensated for some of this, or else I'll go out and work on a furnace right now. And you guys don't get me because.
But we do like to be here on YouTube, and we do thank you, and we do consider your viewership to be, very valuable. And so I just don't want to make sure you don't think that, or you think that like we don't appreciate it because you're not like over. Yeah,
you get some merch. We got all kinds of merch and shirts and mugs, and Trisha here is having fun going shopping for you guys. So you can head over and get some merch, things like that, just to help us so that we can do more of this. We were able to get some cameras and some groovy software, and our hearts. We're just sewing into you guys, so it's a way for you guys to help us out.
Yeah, so we'll see you next month. We'll either see you over on Patreon in just a minute.
Just a few minutes, yeah.
If you're on our RV Tech tier over on Patreon, we'll see you in a couple weeks for our Zoom call.
Yeah.
And we'll also see you here on YouTube the first Friday of next month, April, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Appreciate you guys.